All right, thank you for joining us today. My name is Trevor Leahy. I'm the Small Business Ombudsman with the Oregon Secretary of State. I work for the Office of Small Business Assistance, and if you're in business and you've got a question, concern, or a problem with a state or local government agency, we're the team that you can contact. Today's presentation is about tax numbers and when a business needs them. I'm also going to talk a bit about where to get the most common tax numbers and what it means to have those tax numbers. First, a disclaimer. I am not a tax preparer and no one on the team is a tax preparer. I'm not qualified or authorized to give tax advice. The Secretary of State as an agency doesn't administer any tax program. Our agency doesn't have access to any of your tax information or tax records, and we can't look up any of your tax accounts. If you're seeking tax advice, I'll provide some resources at the end of the presentation to help you connect with qualified tax preparers or accountants. First, I want to go over some terminology. I try not to speak in acronyms, but you'll likely encounter lots of acronyms as a business owner or a tax preparer. I'm defining some of the more common ones here and hopefully explaining the differences between them. A TIN, which is TIN, is a taxpayer identification number, and it can be anything from a social security number to an individual taxpayer identification number for those who can't get a social security number. It can also be an employer identification number. An employer identification number, or EIN, is probably one of the most commonly and early encountered tax numbers. It's given by the IRS and it transcends state lines. There's also a BIN, which is business identification number. A BIN is a tax number used exclusively for payroll tax. And if you don't have any employees, you probably don't need a BIN. I'm also including the formats on this slide for EINs and BINs, and you will hear me make the distinction. I won't say BIN very often, I'll say BIN, whereas I will say the individual letters EIN to make sure that the distinction between the two is heard. Sometimes businesses have access to a number and they aren't sure which tax number they are looking at. So knowing the formatting of your EIN or your BIN is helpful if you're talking to someone to so they can understand what number you're looking at. I know if you contact our team and you're able to tell us, yeah, the number I'm looking at is two numbers followed by a hyphen, we'll know that it's an EIN. Whereas if it's a series of numbers with a hyphen and a single digit at the end, we'll know that it's a BIN. It's also a good time to mention right now that your tax numbers are confidential. It is a good idea to keep them private. Just like you wouldn't want to share your social security number with a stranger, you really might think twice about giving your tax numbers to strangers. Even if it's someone like me who works for the state, if you wouldn't want me having your social security number, make sure you've got a good reason for sharing your tax numbers, and try not to send them in emails unless you know that it is a secure or confidential person that you're sending them to. I want to talk about EINs first. As I mentioned, EINs are obtained from the Internal Revenue Service. EINs are free and they are easy to get. Considering it's something that involves the federal government, the IRS really does a good job of making EINs accessible. The fastest way to apply for an EIN is online at www.irs.gov. Normally, they have a link for getting an employer identification number right there on their main site. Right now, they have some other things that are more prominently featured. So you can go to their main site and just type in their search bar EIN, and you will see a variety of links, including how to register for an EIN. Since it's online, there is no processing time. Once you submit the application, you get your EIN. I've seen a business receive their EIN in 9 minutes. In my experience, most new businesses are first asked for their EIN when they are opening their first business bank account. There are many instances where you'll have options to use a social security number instead of an EIN, but there are also lots of situations where an EIN is required. If you're entering into a contract or becoming a vendor for the government, or you're becoming a subcontractor under a general contractor, you might be asked to provide an EIN. If you have employees, you'll be required to get an EIN. Remember, the EIN is confidential. My office cannot look up your EIN, and I'd encourage you to keep it private. If your business happens to close or cease operations, there is not a requirement that you close your EIN. You do have to file a final tax return. You do have to close your books, but there's no requirement that you close your EIN. The EIN stays with a business forever, whether the business is operating or not. The business can change locations, move to different states, the name of the business can change, and keep that same EIN. There are instances where an EIN will have to change, such as a restructuring of a business. If partners come onto the business and you go from a sole proprietor to a partnership, that's considered a structural change and a new EIN is required. The IRS has an easy to read page on helping determine if a new EIN is ever required. I would recommend that you read that page if you aren't sure if you need a new EIN, or check with a tax preparer if you have more questions. So the other most common tax number is a BIN, a business identification number. Those tax numbers are used in Oregon for employers with payroll in Oregon. If you are in business and you don't have any employees, you don't need a BIN. Having a BIN obligates businesses to submit quarterly payroll tax reports to 3 different agencies: the Department of Revenue, the Department of Consumer and Business Services, and the Employment Department. Now, there is a method for submitting reports to those 3 agencies in one combined report, but still, it is easy to make mistakes on those, and unless you are a fan of submitting information every quarter to the government, I would strongly recommend that if you don't need a BIN, that you don't obtain a BIN, because the mere act of having a BIN obligates you to do those quarterly reports. Failure to submit those quarterly reports can lead to stiff penalties. Usually the Department of Revenue is the first to respond to any failure to file a quarterly report, and their estimated assessments can get close to $10,000 per quarter. If you're planning to get a BIN, you want to make sure that you're prepared for the additional work you'll need to submit those reports. There are a few exceptions to what I just said about only having a BIN if you have employees. If you are incorporated, you have a registered corporation in Oregon, you as the owner are considered an employee of that corporation, and you have to have a BIN attached to that corporation. So even if you don't have anyone else, if you choose to organize as a corporation, you have to get a BIN, you have to do those quarterly reports. If you don't have a corporation, but you choose to be taxed as a corporation, which is something that happens most commonly with LLCs, limited liability companies. Limited liability companies, without getting too much in the weeds, are disregarded. They're not recognized by the IRS. So LLCs have to choose how they want to be taxed, and it is common for LLCs to choose to be taxed as a corporation. Doing so oftentimes means that they have to get a BIN because they are being taxed as corporations. There is also an unemployment insurance program called the Self-Employment Assistance Program. It's a program that people who are pursuing a self-employment venture apply for. Their application is scored by the employment department, and if they are accepted into that program, they receive unemployment benefits while pursuing their self-employment venture. People who are in that program are required to get a BIN right away. They are also told that they can close their BIN right away. They have to get a BIN for statistical purposes to report to the US Department of Labor. So those people likely don't have employees, but have to get a BIN. They can close the BIN immediately. If you have a BIN and your business closes or you eliminate all of your staff, you must proactively close or deactivate your BIN or continue filing quarterly payroll reports indefinitely. It is one of the few things that you have to do if you're closing a business in Oregon. A lot of other small businesses that are just ceasing operations can do so passively. But if there is a BIN in place, that BIN must be closed, or else you risk the $10,000 penalties that I mentioned earlier. Many businesses accidentally get a BIN thinking it's a requirement. They don't realize that getting that BIN can result in expensive procedures. If you aren't sure about getting a BIN, please call and ask my team or a tax advisor about whether or not you need a BIN. So a few other tax numbers out there that are likely going to be encountered depending on where you are. The city of Portland has its own separate business registration apart from the state. Any business that is operating within Portland city limits or really within Multnomah County is going to have to register with the city of Portland, and that is going to be a separate tax number. The city of Portland doesn't have a local business license. They charge a tax based on income earned by the business within city or county limits. So that is another tax return and tax account that businesses need to be aware of. The city of Portland has a dedicated division for business taxes, and I would encourage you, if you are a business operating in Portland city limits, to reach out to the city itself and get information about what the liability is, because it is going to be different than your state or federal tax liability. The city of Bend has a similar registration and tax requirements, very much like Portland. It is a good idea, regardless of where you're operating, to check locally to see what your city or county requires for businesses. Many cities in Oregon have local business license requirements, and you can think of those as a flat tax fee. Oftentimes, it's a flat rate that is paid annually, but some may be structured like Portland or Bend. Every city gets to choose its own requirements, and those can change. So it is perfectly all right to check with your local city hall or the county tax assessor to find out if they require anything obscure. It's unlikely that any local or trade business license or your registration number from the Secretary of State is going to be linked to any tax account at any time. Having those is, and when I say those, I mean a local business license or a registration number from the Secretary of State, is unlikely to be sufficient for someone needing a tax number to look at a tax account or access tax records. So as far as resources go, I'm giving a few here. For help with an EIN, a good starting place is the IRS website at www.irs.gov. I don't have a good way to reach the IRS by phone that I could share with this audience. The IRS might have substantial hold times, so their website is the best thing I can provide. BINs, since they are a state tax number, those questions can be directed to the Department of Revenue. Their registration team is frankly phenomenal in my opinion. They offer excellent customer service, and you can reach them by phone at 503-945-8100, which will put you into a phone tree. Selecting option 2, then option 1 usually connects me with a human being. If you need to change information on your BIN or close your BIN, search online for the Oregon Change in Status form. It is a busy looking form because it's used for a variety of things, but one of the things it's used for is changing information on a BIN. It's also used for deactivating or permanently closing a BIN. If you don't want to change a BIN but are intrigued by the idea of doing quarterly reports, I can refer you to www.oregon.gov/payroll tax, where you will find the instructions for submitting quarterly payroll tax returns. That document is about 25 to 30 pages, which gets updated every year to reflect any changes here in Oregon about payroll tax laws and requirements. As far as local help, contact your local city hall or your county tax assessor. Believe it or not, the county tax assessors that I've worked with are phenomenal people who are eager to help taxpayers. If you're looking for additional help or need a referral to a tax preparer or accountant, I listed 3 different acronyms down at the bottom here. The first is the Oregon Association of Tax Consultants. It's a nonprofit, and they can give referrals for tax professionals. The second is the Oregon Society of Tax Consultants, who provide ongoing education for tax professionals. And while I didn't see anything on their webpage about referrals, they do have very in-depth, helpful links on their links page. And so if you're looking for more overarching information, I would recommend going to the OSTC webpage. And then finally, the Oregon Board of Tax Practitioners is the state licensing body for tax practitioners in Oregon. If you go to their webpage, you can not only find a licensee, but you can look up disciplinary actions taken against those who have practiced tax preparation unlawfully and been sanctioned. So you can get a referral from the Oregon Association of Tax Consultants and then do another level of vetting them by looking up whether they have had actions taken against them by the licensing agency. You can also contact our office with questions. Like I said, we are not tax preparers. We can't give tax advice, but we can provide you with all of the resources and some general information as I've talked about in this presentation. So you can get in touch with my team either by clicking on the Need Help button, which you will find on many state agency websites. Clicking on the Get Help button will bring up a web form, and it creates a case for the team. You can also call our office toll-free at 844-469-5512. Normally that goes to every member of the team, but right now it rings at our intake specialist's phone, and he can either provide you the information or get you connected with one of the other advocates in the office. You can also email us at business.sos@oregon.gov. That email address is monitored by the entire team. We are free and confidential. We will never charge you for anything. And if we can't provide you the information you're looking for, we can certainly try to connect you with better resources. So with that, I thank you for attending and listening to this, and hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.